You're a burden, you've ruined everything, Dad yelled. I smiled and walked away. Mom texted. Never come back. I replied. Okay, your bills are now yours. And then my phone blew up. I read the message twice, just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. Never come back. It was almost funny. Almost. After everything I had done for them, the rent payments, the credit card bills, the medical expenses they always forgot to handle, they had the nerve to act like I was the problem. Like I was the burden. A slow grin spread across my face as I typed my response. Okay. Your bills are now yours. I hit send and exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Then, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. First, it was my mother, calling nonstop. Then my father. Then both of them at the same time. Texts flooded in so fast that the notification bar couldn't keep up. I didn't even bother to open them. I knew what they'd say. Wait, let's talk. You're overreacting. Don't be immature. I let the phone buzz on the table and leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. This was it. This was the moment I had been too scared to take for years. And it felt incredible. I didn't just cut them off financially. Oh no, that would have been too easy. If they wanted me gone, I would make sure they felt what my absence truly meant. It was time to teach them a lesson. The buzzing didn't stop. It was a constant, angry vibration on the table, as if my phone itself was having a breakdown. I picked it up and scrolled through the messages, skimming past the desperate ones. Mom, you can't be serious. Dad, you're acting like a child. Mom, how could you do this to us? Dad, pick up the phone right now. I smirked and put my phone down. Let them sweat. First, I logged into my banking app and canceled every single autopayment linked to their accounts. Rent? Gone. Utilities? Nope. Credit cards? Frozen. Their Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime? Cancelled. If they thought I was bluffing, they were in for a very rude awakening. Next, I logged into the electric and water company websites. I wasn't just stopping payments. I was closing the accounts. Everything was in my name, so it wasn't hard. Let's see how they enjoy a house with no power or running water. Still, I wasn't done. Their internet and cable provider? A few clicks and it was disconnected. I imagined my dad trying to turn on his favorite sports channel only to be met with a black screen. I chuckled. Then came the final nail in the coffin, their landlord. I had been paying their rent directly for years, so I called the property manager. Hi, this is Ethan Carter. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I won't be covering the rent for 304 Ridgeway anymore. The tenants will need to handle payments themselves starting this month. There was a brief silence on the other end before the landlord said, Wait, your parents? Yep. Do they know this? They will soon, I said and hung up. By now, my phone had stopped buzzing. The silence was almost eerie. But I knew better. They weren't done, they were just regrouping. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, my screen lit up with an incoming call. Mom. I stared at it for a second, then, for the first time in my life, I picked up, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity. Her voice came through immediately, high-pitched and frantic. Ethan, what are you doing? The electricity just got shut off. I called the company, and they said the account was closed. I stayed silent, letting her spiral. I tried paying rent and they said no payment is scheduled. Ethan, this isn't funny. Fix this. I took a deep breath and leaned back. No. Silence. Then a screech. What do you mean no? I almost laughed at how quickly her voice shifted from panic to fury. I mean no, I repeated calmly. You told me to never come back. So I'm done. Everything was in my name, and now I'm taking it back. This is different, she snapped. You can't just leave us like this. Oh, I can. And I have, I said. She tried switching tactics. We didn't mean it, Ethan. You're twisting our words. You know we love you. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Because never come back sounds pretty clear to me. That was. She fumbled, scrambling for an excuse. That was just, your father was upset. You know how he gets. He didn't mean it. And what about you? I asked. You texted me to never come back. Was that just a joke? I was angry, she shrieked. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. I let that hang in the air for a second before delivering the final blow. Yeah. And people do things they do mean when they're fed up. With that, I hung up and blocked her number. Next up? My father. I wasn't just going to cut him off financially. I was going to hit him where it really hurt. His under-the-table side gig? The one he bragged about when he thought no one was listening? Yeah. The IRS was going to love hearing about that. The moment I blocked my mother's number, my phone rang again. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Whatever he had to say, I wasn't interested in hearing it directly. But after a moment of hesitation, I tapped the message and hit play. At first, there was silence. Then, his voice, calm, controlled, but laced with barely suppressed rage. You ungrateful little brat. I rolled my eyes. Classic. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You think you're punishing us? You think you have power here? There was a sharp inhale, like he was trying to keep himself from screaming. Fine. You want to play games? You better be ready for what happens next. Because we're not just going to sit back and take this. You owe us, Ethan. And you will regret this. I smirked and deleted the message. Owe them? I had spent years being their personal ATM, draining my savings while they lived off my back, never once showing gratitude. And now that I was gone, they thought they could threaten me into coming back? No. Now it was my turn. The first thing I did was pull up my emails. My father had always bragged about his cash-only side hustle, some shady contractor work he did off the books to avoid taxes. He was so proud of how he kept more money in his pocket, while I, the idiot in his eyes, paid my fair share like a fool. I started drafting an email. Subject, underreported income concern, anonymous tip. Dear IRS. I recently became aware of an individual who has been avoiding tax payments by working exclusively for cash under the table. This individual has been operating in city, state, for several years and has accumulated substantial untaxed income. I believe this warrants further investigation. Sincerely, a concerned citizen. I attached some of my father's own texts as proof, messages where he had bragged about never paying taxes on his earnings. Then, with a deep breath, I hit send. Let him deal with that. Next, I took care of the joint credit cards. For years, my parents had piggybacked on my accounts, swiping their way through fancy dinners and expensive gifts under my credit limit. I had let it slide because, at the time, I thought family meant sacrifice. Not anymore. I logged into my banking app and removed them as authorized users. The second I did, I imagined my father's face at the grocery store when his card got declined. Oh, but I wasn't done. Their car insurance? Cancelled. Their cell phone plans? Disconnected. The Amazon account they used to order whatever they wanted? Locked. I was shutting down their entire safety net. They wanted me gone. I'd make sure they felt it. Hours passed, and then my phone lit up with a new number. I stared at it, debating. Then, on a whim, I answered. Hello? There was silence. Then, a voice I wasn't expecting. My sister. Ethan. She breathed, relief flooding her tone. Oh, thank God. Listen, you have to stop this. Mom's losing it. Dad's furious. They don't know what to do. I think they're scared. I smirked. Good. Ethan, I'm serious. She snapped. They don't have rent money. They don't have groceries. Mom is crying. She keeps saying you're being cruel. I laughed. Cruel? Cruel is spending years sucking the life out of someone and never once saying thank you. Cruel is calling me a burden after I paid their bills every month. Cruel is acting like I owe them something when they've done nothing but take. She hesitated. I mean, yeah? I get that. But you can't just cut them off completely. They're our parents. I sighed. You still don't get it, do you? Get what? She asked. This isn't me cutting them off. This is me giving them exactly what they wanted. They said I was a burden? Great. Now they don't have to deal with me anymore. Silence. Then, in a small voice, she said, You're really not coming back, are you? No, I said. And neither is my money. Then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I was free. The silence after hanging up on my sister felt different. Not like before, when cutting them off had been an idea, a theory. No, this was real. It was happening. I had burned the bridge, and I wasn't looking back. That night, as I sat in my apartment with a drink in hand, I imagined what was unfolding at their house. My mother pacing the floor, clutching her phone, sending frantic messages that would never be answered. My father, red-faced, trying and failing to make a call on his now disconnected phone, cursing under his breath when the Wi-Fi cut out. The fridge getting emptier. The landlord knocking. The realization that no money was coming. For once, they were the ones struggling. I slept better that night than I had in years. By the next morning, my phone was eerily quiet. No calls. No texts. They had finally realized I wasn't going to save them. I logged into my email, sipping my coffee, and found something that made me chuckle, a message from their landlord. Hey Ethan, just checking in. Your parents haven't paid rent this month. I tried reaching out, but they're not responding. Any idea what's going on? I stared at the email for a moment, then typed a quick reply. Not my responsibility anymore. They'll need to figure it out. Good luck. I hit send and leaned back, picturing my father's face when the eviction notice arrived. They were out of options. And I wasn't coming back. By midday, the silence was broken. I was at work when my phone vibrated with an unknown number. I usually ignored those, but something told me to pick up. Hello? At first, there was just heavy breathing. Then, my father's voice. But this time, it was different. Not the usual smug, commanding tone he always used with me. No, this was something else. Something desperate. Ethan, he said, his voice tight. Listen. We need to talk. I smirked, already knowing where this was going. About what? This situation. He stammered. Things are getting complicated. Oh, I bet. I leaned back in my chair. I thought you didn't need me. I said. I thought I was a burden. There was silence on the other end. Then he sighed. We said things we didn't mean. There it was. The backpedaling. The same people who had told me to never come back, who had mocked me for carrying them all these years, were suddenly realizing just how much they had relied on me. I decided to play along. Oh, so now you didn't mean it? We were angry, he said, his tone growing defensive. But that doesn't mean you just abandon your family. That word, abandon, sent a spark of irritation through me. You mean like how you abandoned me every time I needed something? I shot back. Like when I was struggling, but you still took my money without hesitation? Like when you told me to never come back? He hesitated, and I could picture him grinding his teeth, hating that he had to grovel. Look, your mother is upset, he finally said. She's been crying for days. She's not doing well, Ethan. I almost laughed. The guilt trip. Classic. And what exactly do you want me to do about that? Another pause. Then, the real reason for the call. We need help with the rent, he admitted, voice low. And the bills. Things have gotten complicated and… I cut him off. That's not my problem. Ethan, be reasonable. He snapped, his frustration finally showing. You can't just cut us off like this. We raised you. I felt a strange calm wash over me. No. Grandma raised me. You just took from me. More silence. Then, with a bitter edge, he said, You'll regret this. I smiled. No, Dad. You will. And then I hung up. By that evening, the floodgates had opened. Blocked numbers, new emails, even social media messages from my mother. Ethan, please, we need to talk. Your father is being stubborn, but we really need help. I didn't mean what I said. You know how things get in arguments. You're still my son. The electricity is off, Ethan. We can't live like this. Can you at least pay that? The landlord says we have 2 weeks to pay or we're out. Are you really going to let that happen? I read each message, then deleted them. No apology. No real remorse. Just panic. They weren't sorry for how they treated me. They were sorry they lost their free ride. And now, they were drowning. For once, I wasn't the one struggling. A week passed. I expected more calls, more desperate texts, but instead, things went quiet. Too quiet. At first, I thought maybe they'd figured something out. Maybe they had borrowed money from someone else, or found another target to leech off. But then I got a text from an unexpected number. My aunt. Ethan, I don't know exactly what's going on, but your parents are in serious trouble. Your mom called me crying. Your dad won't talk to anyone. Their landlord sent an eviction notice, and they're out of money. Are you really not going to help? I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. They told me to never come back. I'm just giving them what they wanted. Her reply was almost instant. Ethan, they're your parents. I sighed. That again. And I was their son. That didn't stop them from using me like a personal bank account. I expected more pushback, but after a few minutes she simply responded. I get it. But they're losing everything. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. Losing everything. I should have felt guilty. But I didn't. For the first time in my life, I felt free. That night, curiosity got the best of me. I drove past their house, not to talk, not to step inside, just to see. It was dark. Pitch black. No lights, no TV glow through the windows, no noise. Their car was still in the driveway, but it was clear they weren't living comfortably anymore. The reality of their situation had finally hit them. I imagined my father sitting in the dark, fuming, too proud to admit that this was his fault. My mother probably curled up on the couch, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. They had built their entire life around using me. And now, that life was gone. I drove away without a second thought. For once, I wasn't the one left in the dark. 3 days after my aunt's text, I got another message, from my parents' landlord. Hey Ethan, just a heads up. Your parents are being evicted next week. They haven't paid rent at all this month, and they're not responding to my calls. Just thought you'd want to know. I stared at the message, letting it sink in. This was it. For years, they had lived off my money. For years, they had treated me like an obligation, like my only purpose was to keep them afloat. And now? Their house, their comfort, their entire way of life was crumbling. I thought I'd feel bad. But all I felt was relief. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I texted back. Where are they supposed to go? His response came a minute later. Not my problem. But if they don't clear out by next Friday, I'm calling the sheriff. I smirked. Perfect. The next evening, my sister called. I picked up this time. Her voice was different, quieter, like all the fight had been drained out of her. Ethan, you win, okay? She said. They're losing the house. They have nothing. Are you happy now? I took a slow breath. I didn't win, I said calmly. They just finally faced the consequences of their own actions. She scoffed. You could fix this, you know. Just one payment. That's all it would take. I almost laughed. One payment? That's how she saw it. Like I was some genie who could magically make their problems disappear? They made their choice, I said. Now they get to live with it. They're our parents, she snapped, but her voice cracked. She didn't even believe her own words anymore. They were never parents to me, I said flatly. I was just their wallet. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, could hear the wheels turning in her head. For the first time, she couldn't argue. Then, in a barely audible voice, she whispered, Where are they supposed to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. And for once I meant it. By the time their eviction date arrived, my parents had finally reached their breaking point. I got one last voicemail from my mother, voice shaky and broken. "Ethan, please. We don't have anywhere to go. I don't know what we're going to do. Just call me. Please." I listened to it twice. Then, with zero hesitation, I deleted it. They had thrown me away. Now I was finally throwing them away, too. And it felt amazing. The day after the eviction, I got another unexpected message, this time, from my cousin Melissa. "Hey. Just thought you'd want to know, your parents are staying at a motel outside town. They're broke. Mom said they asked her for money, but she refused. Looks like nobody's bailing them out this time." I read the message twice, then set my phone down. It was actually happening. They were out of options. No cozy house. No credit cards. No endless stream of my money keeping them afloat. For the first time in their lives, they had to fend for themselves. And not a single part of me wanted to save them. Later that night, I got another call, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I debated ignoring it but picked up out of sheer curiosity. A weak voice crackled through the speaker. "My mother. Ethan," she breathed. "Please. Just talk to me." I stayed silent. She sniffled, then let out a broken laugh. We lost everything." I almost rolled my eyes. "No, Mom. You didn't lose everything. You just lost me. We don't have anywhere to go," she continued. "Your father, he's not handling it well. He keeps saying it's not his fault, but—" She trailed off, her voice catching. I waited. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "I know we did wrong by you." That made me pause. A confession? After all this time? I gripped the phone, waiting to hear what she'd say next. "I know we took advantage," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. I never thought you'd actually leave us like this." I exhaled slowly. This was it. The moment where most people would cave. Where I was supposed to hear my mother's tears, feel guilty, and swoop in to rescue them. But I felt nothing. No guilt. No sympathy. Just peace. For years they had drained me dry, of money, of love, of patience. And now, they wanted to apologize? Only because they had lost. I took a deep breath and finally spoke. I meant what I said. Silence. I continued, my voice calm, steady. "You wanted me out of your life. Now you got your wish. Ethan, please." "No," I said simply. "We're done." And before she could say another word, I hung up. Then, with a small smile, I blocked her number. For the first time in my life, I was free. Days passed. Then weeks. And nothing happened. No more desperate calls. No more guilt trips. No more messages begging for help. They had finally given up. For the first time in years, my money was mine. My time was mine. My life was mine. I found myself smiling more, sleeping better, enjoying the little things. Without them, everything felt lighter. One afternoon, I sat on my balcony with a coffee, watching the sunset. My phone buzzed, a message from Melissa. "Just so you know, your parents moved in with some distant relatives. Guess they finally figured something out." I smirked, took a sip of coffee, and typed back. "Good for them." Then, without a second thought, I put my phone away and enjoyed the view.